So today we have Tom Horne here to speak to us. He's running for U.S. Congress, 5th consecutive district. Congressional, sorry. District. Tonight?
Well, I'm Tom Horne. I'm Republican. I'm running for Congress for the 5th District for the seat now held by Cathy McMorris Rodgers. She's been there for 10 years now. I've voted for her 5 times and I don't want to vote for her again. So I figured there wasn't anybody else running, so I decided I'd do it. In 2008, candidate Obama promised to fundamentally change the United States of America. He won in 2008 with 53%, and in 2012 with 51%. He's our president, but those numbers don't give him a mandate to fundamentally change our country. I'm running for this seat due to the poor performance of the Republican leadership, including Cathy McMorris Rodgers. It's like they don't know how to play the game they're in. They're in a PR game. For example, her reply to the President's State of the Union address. It was 10 minutes of unfiltered access to the entire country. She could have challenged the President's then recent threat to use his pen and his phone to rule by executive order when Congress won't go along. That's how they do that. That's how they do things in banana republics, not in our country, at least not till lately. Instead, she gave us a miscongeniality speech. A couple weeks later, she came out for the Republican leadership's plan to pass an immigration bill that includes legalization. And she said that we're going to have to push that this is a legal status. It's not amnesty. Well, I'm sorry. If they get to stay, they stay here. It's amnesty. So I'll provide a much stronger pushback for the majority of this district and nearly half of the country who did not vote for President Obama, and for the clear majority who do not want another amnesty. So if you want miscongeniality opposition to the President and continued massive immigration of unskilled labor to hold down wages, vote for Cathy. If you want a Republican who will never vote for amnesty by any name and will push back hard against the President and his banana republic tactics, vote for me, Tom Horne. That's my 2-minute speech.
Okay. What do you believe is the proper role of government?
I believe that the government's proper role is that which is enumerated in the first couple articles of the Constitution. I can't claim to have read it lately. But there are enumerated powers. That's the powers that the federal government should exercise.
Okay. What do you feel is the best method of obtaining federal revenues?
That's a good question. Taxes. When you get right down to it, every bit of revenue that comes into the federal government is coming out of our pockets. It's either coming out of our pockets in tariffs on imported goods, leading to increased prices of imported goods, and taxes on business, which leads to higher prices for goods and services, or flat-out income taxes. I mean, as far as I'm aware, that's the only source, our pockets, taxes.
What is the best way to ensure a well-educated population?
Wow. Hope there's not any teachers in here. First thing I would try and do is weaken the power of public sector unions, specifically the teachers' union. Education is, to me, under control of the wrong people. I think it's really under control of the people training teachers. They essentially get to select the teachers, select the people that go into the profession. They indoctrinate them into the accepted tenets of the profession. And the people that accept the whole deal, hook, line, and sinker, are the people that stay in the profession. And anyhow, I don't think we're doing our children a very good job with the system we have now. And I think the first step in making an improvement would be to decrease the power of the teachers' unions.
when do you feel that U.S. military intervention in other nations is justified?
I feel it's justified unquestionably when there is a direct threat to our country, to our nation. Direct physical threat to our country, such as the intervention in Afghanistan after Al-Qaeda attacked us. We have to protect our national interests. Our national interests include freedom of navigation. I mean, that's freedom of commerce. Those things. And we also have to look at developing threats. Now, if somebody spends every Saturday or every Friday afternoon, ends every Friday afternoon with chance of death to America, that country's not our friend. And those chants being supported, encouraged by their government, that country's not our friend. We have to keep a sharp eye on them. If it looks like they can pose an existential threat to us, such as acquiring nuclear weapons, then we have to do something. That's my opinion. You can't sit by and let your enemy armed to the teeth when he has told everybody that you're in his sights.
Even when we're giving them the munitions?
Which ones are we talking about now?
Any of them.
Well, I'm against giving enemies munitions. There's no doubt about that. It's a kind of sometimes it's a close call who that enemy is. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's the ancient proverb that sort of the world works on these days and has always worked on these days. So sometimes it's a close call.
How do you view, or what is your opinion of the war on drugs?
I think it's a waste of time. And the reason that I've got a couple of things I believe. One is there's a finite supply of idiots. And there's no way, these idiots are smart enough to get access to drugs under the existing circumstance. If drugs were legalized, I don't think there'd be very many more idiots taking drugs. It's a huge worldwide problem. It's corrupted governments all over the world. It's made some parts of the world ungovernable. It's helping to fund terrorism. The law enforcement costs, and the incarceration costs, and the legal costs on our country are phenomenal. And I think the net result of our current policy is we're turning idiots into criminals, and we're turning serious criminals into very wealthy people all over the world, and at great cost to ourselves. It's a quality of life issue. These people, to get their drugs, they steal from us. And to catch them, our police forces have been militarized. I think that's a danger to our freedom in the final analysis. So if it were up to me, I'd legalize everything, and I'd take it one step further. I'd give it away for free. And I'd save synthesize it, give it away for free, use the money saved in enforcement and incarceration in a propaganda campaign. And yeah, why? It's a terrible, nasty product. Why should anybody make money off of that stuff? The stupid bastards that are going to take it, they don't need our help to get lower. They're as low as you can get. So anyhow, I have strong feelings about the subject. I think we're fighting a losing battle, and there's a lot of. William F. Buckley was for legalization. Friedman, the economist, forgot his first name. Milton Friedman was for legalization. There's a whole law enforcement organization called LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. They're for legalization, and the rationale is more or less the rationale I've outlined. So that's my opinion on drugs.
Okay. What ideas do you have to fix our country's troublesome debt situation?
Well, we got to pay for all of this stuff, and we have our expectations are huge. We've got large unfunded liabilities to pay for my retirement and everybody else's retirement, and we got to come to the realization we got to pay for this stuff. I think we need huge cuts, all kinds of stuff that could be cut. I mean, typical politician. Yeah, let's cut all the waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse to cut, except we're not cutting it. Medicare, good example. There's features in Medicare that just ask for somebody to cheat. All you need is a person's name, and their Medicare ID number, and sign a website saying you sell medical devices. And then you you manufacture bills and send them to Medicare. And Medicare's rules state that if you are a Medicare service provider of medical devices, you have to be paid in 30 days, period. Doesn't say somebody has to go out there and make sure you've got a business. It just says you got to be paid in 30 days. So there was, most of my information used to come from 60 Minutes. That's one I remember from a long time ago. As far as I know, that's not been changed. There's a lot of rules like that in our various entitlement programs that are ripe for fraud. And so, waste, fraud, and abuse, of course, cut agencies, Department of Education, cut it way down. Just make it a very small agency to pass out money, rather than a huge agency to pass out money and manufacture requirements for other people to have to live by. Cut layers of bureaucracy. After 9/11, there was no accountability. The CIA director, he didn't lose his job. The FBI director, he didn't lose his job. So what did they do to solve the problem? Nothing as far as accountability goes. Nobody got chopped. They reorganized things. They made a Department of Homeland Security and moved various little agencies into that. And then they made it, so I'm not sure that needs to be chopped. You could argue that it was a good reorganization. Another thing they did was they established the Director of National Intelligence. As far as I can tell, all he does is supervises the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. He didn't get any more agencies under him. He didn't get the National Reconnaissance Office, the spy satellites. He didn't get the NSA. They're, intelligence related. I mean, I would have thought that he'd have got those things, but he didn't. They're still under Department of Defense. So here's a guy. They just added a layer of supervision to the CIA director, and some presidents don't hardly talk to the CIA director anyhow. So what's he need another supervisor for?
Point of information.
Yeah.
Department of Education is not a constitutional power.
Okay, there you go. Drop it.
There you go.
Okay.
The medical system in America is broken. How do we fix it?
Well, right now, Obamacare certainly screwed it up. And prior to that, however, what set the stage for Obamacare was hugely increasing costs. Medical care costs were going up. I mean, the care itself was going up fast. And you can make some difference in that by getting the people out of that money stream that weren't contributing anything to medical care, such as the lawyers. Go ahead and institute tort reform. Now, people say, that's only going to save 5%. I'll take 5%. I think it's higher than 5%, but it's definitely 5%. And we probably more. And avoided costs due to insurance fees, huge insurance premiums, the defensive medicine that the doctors practice so that they won't get sued, stuff like that. It adds up. And as far as the insurance system is all screwed up. Every state had insurance requirements, different insurance requirements. Every state had different insurance mandates. California, your insurance policy's got to pay for God only knows what, sex change operations, I think. In certain cities in California. In prison. Yeah, well, anyhow, it's just gotten out of hand and gone over the edge of reality. So you had 50 different insurance mandates that the insurance companies had to meet. So the insurance companies had, a zillion plans. I think they ought to repeal all those state requirements and make it so that insurance companies could sell the same policy nationwide, and then make it you'd have a bunch of competition then. You'd have a lot more competition than you have in the situation where it's all chopped up. And the competition, there's a lot of things that favor huge businesses. And one of the things is the chopping up the insurance companies. I mean, chopping up all the requirements. If you have, 50 different requirements, what size company do you have to be able to tolerate that kind of administrative overhead? You've got to be huge. So I think it cuts down on competition by limiting effectively the insurance industry to great big players. If we had a marketplace that was easier to access, just administratively, I think you get more players, more competition. So anyhow, abolish the state 50 state requirements, make it possible for insurance companies to operate across the entire company with a range of policies, and give the customers the choice of what they want to be covered for. If you want to be covered for sex change operations, should some emergency befall you and you need a sex change operation, then that's the kind of policy you ought to pay for. Otherwise, if you don't think you're going to have some emergency that requires a sex change operation, you shouldn't have to have that kind of policy. I mean, insurance is about protecting you from an unforeseen loss. And your people pool together to protect one another. And I really don't want to be in a pool of people who think they might have to have a sex change operation. I think that'd be very expensive, and I don't want one. I don't want somebody to decide that I need one. So anyhow, that's my spiel on medical care.
On your website, you suggest the licensing of firearm owners to ensure that only law-abiding citizens possess firearms. How would that work? What would the punishment be for allowing your license to expire? What would a license cost? And how would these laws be enforced?
Well, right now we have, I think there's like 40 states that are required to issue you a carry permit if you ask for one. And you're not a criminal, and they don't know that you're mentally defective. And so, as far as I'm concerned, things are going my way. But I think we do need to keep guns out of the hands of people that are crazy. And I think we got to get a handle on the people that are crazy. Our mental health plan went from taking care of mentally ill people. We were concerned about the care of mentally ill people, and we warehoused them, and we didn't do a great job of taking care of them. But then all of a sudden, with the aid of when the drugs made it possible, the concern shifted from taking care of these folks to being concerned about their freedom. So you hand them a bottle of pills, you pat them on the butt, and you send them home, or send them wherever you go, and they end up under a bridge. So that's a facet of the gun violence problem that we have now. And all of these huge shootings, the mass shootings, every one of them has been mentally ill people. All these guys with the assault rifles that mow down a bunch of people, they've been mentally ill. They should have been locked up. And instead they get a gun. So I would prefer that we take our mentally ill people off the street, take care of them like we're supposed to take care of them, and not rely on them to take their meds and stay sane. And since we're not going to do that, I hate to take everybody's freedom away, but a little tiny bit of freedom. Let's register people. Everybody gets a concealed weapons permit or a weapons permit that wants one. You go down, you buy a gun immediately, like with our concealed weapons permits here. As far as what's it cost, it should be a nominal, affordable cost. I'd say about what we pay here. What do we pay here? $35. Well,
It's
35, 50.
$55, I think, for the first 5 years, and then
Yeah.
it's something like $35
Yeah.
after that.
There's a certain amount of government control that's needed, and I think registering the people at a reasonable cost, a reasonable time period, is a reasonable thing to do. And I think you should be registered on a must-issue basis. If you're not a criminal, if you're not mentally defective, they must issue you a permit. I lived in an area, well, I spent a lot of my time down south growing up and when I was in the service. And in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, if you wanted a pistol and you weren't a good old boy, the sheriff didn't have to give you a permit to buy a pistol. And if you were black, you were definitely not going to get a permit to buy a pistol. So, I mean, things have changed. I think those are probably by now, all of those areas are must-issue areas. But anyhow, as far as I'm concerned, things are going my way. We have must-issue laws in the majority of states now, and I think we're going to get it in the rest. So.
Okay, so that's all the questions from our board. If anybody would like to ask some questions, now would be the time.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I apologize for coming late. I thought you started at 7. Just a quick question to follow up on the firearms issue. You mentioned just take away a little bit of our freedom. You know, our freedom's been eroded enough in a variety of different areas.
I'm aware of that.
And I, like you are, I'm a veteran, retired Air Force. You know, I fought for the Constitution. I still will put my hand up to the Constitution and I'll support it. You know, the Constitution is very, very clear. The Second Amendment says it shall not be infringed. So let's have a dialogue here about why your position is what it is.
My position is what it is because we have an uncontrolled mental health situation, number one. Number two, I don't want felons in possession of firearms. And I don't, pardon? That's right, but you can put them in jail for having them. I don't want them going down.
We can do that now with
That's
the
right.
laws as they are.
What's that?
We can put felons
You know,
in
you
prison.
can, but they don't.
But
Follow the law.
what makes you
Follow
think
the
that
law.
that would change if we licensed all firearm owners?
I don't think it would necessarily change. I mean, if there's no interest in enforcing the laws, they're not going to be enforced. I would apply some interest in enforcing the laws. And we do have to keep mentally defective people, unreliable people from getting firearms somehow.
That's not that. Adam Lanza murdered his own mother
I know.
in order to acquire her guns.
Right.
She would have passed any background check. She would have
Right.
been issued any.
Okay, would you say she was responsible giving him access to
I
weapons?
don't know. Well, do you know how she stored her weapons?
I don't
personally
care.
don't know. Well,
He got him. He got him, and he shot her, and then he went and shot a bunch of other people. She was not responsible. She should not have fed his desire to screw around with weapons, and she did. I mean, we all got to take some responsibility for our own actions. If you give access to somebody that's mentally defective to a weapon or to your car, then you're responsible for it. I'm not. I think we just got to come to a realization that we got to all do our part. Otherwise, our freedoms are in jeopardy.
Since more people are killed by knives than guns, why don't we register knives? This whole idea, if you know where the guns are, they can be taken away from you. And we are against registering.
Well,
If you don't think that the war on drugs can handle the drug thing, why in the hell do you think that this is going to do anything as far as guns? The criminals are still going to have them. The mentally ill may be a problem, but it's the way we're treating them. So unless you put them back into institutions,
I think we should.
then, so there's your solution. It's not about registering me to own a gun. I
Right.
have nothing to do with shooting anybody.
I agree, but there are a lot of people out there that do shoot people.
There aren't a lot of people. When you look at the number of deaths
No, I know
by
exactly.
gun,
Yeah.
it is
You're right.
not nearly as many as other ways of killing.
FBI 's
And yet we're
Yeah.
hammering the guns.
Well, I don't
It's
necessarily
ridiculous.
agree with you there. There's a lot more people killed with knives and hammers than there are with any kind of rifle.
That's what I just said.
No, you said guns.
No, I said we have a lot more killings with other weapons than guns.
When she started off. That's
Yeah,
what she said.
okay, well, it's,
So go with
pistols,
hammers.
when you
Go-
throw pistols into it, I think it might be a push there. I don't think it's a lot more. But certainly
You
rifles
should
are
know.
not much dead.
That's a question you're gonna get, so you
Yeah,
really
sure.
need to know the
You're right.
numbers.
Just a,
I think it's
That's a
11,
friendly comment.
it's 11,000 with pistols and about, well, it's 11,000 firearms and about 500 with rifles of all sorts. Now, I don't know how many are killed with
well,
hammers.
that's not right. That's all long guns. It's not just rifles. It's rifles and shotguns.
Yeah, okay. Rifles and shotguns.
But so FBI stats show that somewhere around 75 to 80% of the murders that are committed in the U.S. are criminals killing other criminals. It's basically primarily gang members killing other gang members.
Yeah.
And
You should televise.
Problem solved. They kill each other.
well, yeah, I mean that's where most of the problem. That's where most of the problem lies anyway. And I mean this stuff goes on every day, and we barely ever hear about it.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
only-
in Chicago, what, they have 40 people last weekend get shot.
Could I don't know.
Ridiculous.
I mean, they have about 500 murders a year by gun, I think, in Chicago.
I just feel a constitutional believing American is going to be absolutely opposed to what you said. It is against the Second Amendment. It's against our rights. The
Well-
only reason we have our freedoms.
Okay, well, my point is, they must issue. If it was my way, we would go with, you sign up for a permit, and they have to issue you a permit, period.
You're speaking of not just
I don't
concealed
want them to
carry
know how many
pistols, but
guns
all
I have.
guns?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we really feel
Okay,
strongly
let's
that we
move
don't
on.
want people to know.
She's had her
how many
hand
guns
up.
we have.
Hey, we have 300 million guns in this, 300 million modern guns in this country. And if somebody decided they were going to take them, what do you think would happen? There'd be a revolution.
I know,
What
but
happened in Germany?
Well, they didn't have 300 million. This is the best armed population in the world. And we, 300 million modern firearms, that's something you just can't mess with. And as a practical matter, I don't think they're going to be.
well, that's not going to help you to win your conversation with people.
Well, I'm just interested in telling the truth.
Well,
All right, Laura.
the expensive interest.
Okay, fairly recently, the Southern Poverty Law Center has put people like us on the potential domestic terrorist list. So what if we're officially on the potential domestic terrorist
You're
list?
right.
And those who are on that list would not be allowed to get guns.
Well, there's all kinds of abuses that are going to
I mean,
that are possible, no doubt about it.
That's sort of a drawback in registering guns, checking your criminal record. What if people like us are considered criminals, political criminals?
That's why we have laws. That's one of the good reasons we have lawyers. They can contest stuff like that. There's enough young lawyers that love those black rifles. As you start talking about taking those things away, and those guys not going to, they start thinking twice about voting for Obama. They wish they hadn't. So
You're done with guns?
they're Democrats. Yeah.
I think we understand his point of view on guns. I have a question. What's your point of view on, do you feel that the Supreme Court's ruling on Hobby Lobby is a victory? And if so, why or why not?
Yeah, I think it's a victory. I think they're crazy to bring a suit against Hobby Lobby. I mean, Hobby Lobby was being completely reasonable, I thought. All they wanted to do was restrict methods of birth control that they considered abortion, morning after pill and IUDs. And I don't think everything else was up, they'd pay for everything else. So I think they're crazy to bring the suit. And I'm glad they did. I'm glad they lost. And they're losing ground as a result of it. It's it's a freedom of conscience issue. When presented properly, everybody understands that. We should have the freedom of conscience on matters of religion. So I think it was a major victory for us. Yes, sir.
I think you've been beat up enough on guns. I want to talk about your differences between Kathy McMorris Rogers and your feelings. Most of the people in here have a number of issues with what Kathy has done lately. We have it's basically a constitution-free zone right here in this area because of Homeland Security, which Kathy McMorris voted for and claims she didn't know, but she's done nothing to rectify the problem. And we more and more are getting Homeland Security infiltrating our local police departments and supplying them with high-grade militarized weaponry and assault equipment.
Yeah.
How do you feel on that?
I object to it. I think it's the root of it was the drug war. You know, people started, the fashion was to bust down doors in the drug houses and rush in there before they could flush stuff down the toilet. So they armed themselves up and they got vehicles with battering rams and then just continued from there. And now you got all this free military gear floating around that they glom onto. I don't think it's appropriate. It's militarizing our law enforcement, and I would vote against it at every opportunity. I don't think it's security theater. You know, those folks have made us a bit more secure against terrorism. Not one bit. Any terrorist that's actually got anything, the potential to do us any harm, has got enough money behind him that he's not going to cross the Mexican border or the Canadian border. He's going to fly in here in an airplane. He's going to be put up in a fairly decent hotel. And then he's going to contact his contacts on the ground and do whatever he wants to do. This is security theater, and it's gotten out of hand. And it started with the drug war. The mentality to allow its progress was started in the drug war. That's my opinion. Yes, sir.
I want to give this to you. I got you mixed up with, is it the other guy, Dave?
Yeah.
Dave Wilson?
Yeah.
I'm John Charleston.
John?
This is just something I did about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I gave up on it when I realized there wasn't a chance in hell that we were going to get rid of her. So, but anyway, but these are really, and like if you look here at 2007, this is the children's. That was the incremental buildup for the Obamacare stuff. Did that before Obama.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, your wife told me about this the other day.
My question
curious.
is that, I mean, you know, the 5th Congressional District is such a diversified area. I mean, we're Spokane, okay, you're right here. And you have people, as an example, in the 3rd District who, they may not like Kathy because she's got an R behind her name, but they watch how she votes. They like the fact that she funds all the stuff that, you know, for their EBT cards and all that kind of stuff. So she gets them to roll her way. You got the farms. I mean, you know, this whole thing with amnesty that they got you lit up. It's not just her. We have plenty of people in this state that are voting here, like for the Washington Dream Act, to provide education for illegal aliens in our state. The farmers like that because they want those people here. They like the subsidies that she supports. And when you look at, so I mean, I'd like to say, what are you going to do about that? But I mean, first of all, you have to even go out there and talk to these farmers. I mean,
well, there are not that many farmers. I mean,
it's a big area. There's a lot of farmers.
It's a big area. There's a lot of farmers, but compared to the metropolitan areas in this state, there are not that many farmers. You look at all these dried up little towns. There was a hell of a lot more farmers 30 years ago.
Don't say that when you go there.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
But anyway, mechanization. Yes, ma'am.
No, I want to change to education.
Okay.
And you might want to reiterate your stance in education, but I understood that you felt that we could possibly improve our education system by weakening the National Education Association.
I think
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I think that the wrong people are in control of education.
Why do we have a national education system?
Pardon me?
Why do we have a national education system?
We mean an education department of education?
Yeah.
I don't think we should have a department of education. I think we should chop it down, down to a very bare bones outfit, and the only purpose of it would be to, fund various programs with minimal strings attached.
You know, in the olden days, states were recognized for their education programs. You wanted to move to XYZ state because they have the very best education program. And now states are basically controlled by the federal government. They want one size fits all. And it's destroying our younger generations.
Yeah, well, I don't
And
have...
Washington State doesn't even allow proper charter schools.
Well, I think that's got to change. I mean, there is some evidence that we get one charter school in Spokane and the only one in the state.
Well, they're very controlled, so they aren't
Yeah.
really charter.
They're not charter schools.
They aren't charter schools. It's kabuki theater.
Okay, well, I don't have children in school, so I'm not up on education issues, but I would be for charter schools, decreased power for the teachers' unions, and
Denationalize it.
denationalize would be a good start. Yes, sir.
Are you speaking about farming? It brought up an important point that I've taken note of. I have two very large farmers out where my wife's ranch is. And at the first thought, I thought it was just bad luck on their part. But what I've noticed them doing is they grow tons and tons of hay. And rather than cut hay when it's good, they wait till it's going to rain, they cut it all, get it down so it is ruined. And they write it up and they get crop insurance for it. They don't have to do anything with it if they've lost it all. And I've watched this for a number of years now. I mean, we're talking the two of the richest, they own millions of acres, and they're doing this procedure and getting crop insurance. What do you feel we can do to keep, I mean, we're all paying for that.
Yeah, well.
And it's a waste. It's gaming the system
Right.
just as much as a welfare person is. What can we do about the farm subsidies that are being abused like that?
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas about that?
Well, the farm bill they just passed, it was should be called a food stamp bill. 80% of it is about food stamps. I mean, 80% of the money is food stamps. They had it looked to me like a good provision or two in it. They now, at least you have to plant a crop to get a subsidy. Before this farm bill, you didn't even have to bother to fake a crop. You said I got this wheat land or corn land, and I'll plant it in corn, and the prices will go down. But if I don't plant it in corn, will you pay me? And they say, yeah, here you go. And a lot of those guys turned out the payment went to addresses in Manhattan. I mean, that was before. For a while there, they used to give the zip codes of the. They used to break down the farm subsidy payments by zip code. And Manhattan had by far the largest number, and they don't do. As far as I know, they stopped doing that some years ago. Probably because of the reaction that it provokes. And as far as people faking it like your wife's neighbors, whenever you got a handout program, you got to have somebody looking. And if they find them doing fraud, they ought to slap them.
Well, I found when I was running for office that all the agencies don't have time to investigate. They just have time to write the checks. And I think we need to get more people checking on the people receiving those checks than worried about people to write the checks.
Yeah, well, that's across the board, from the SEC, dealing with those Wall Street guys, all the way down to farm crop insurance guys. Yes, sir.
Well, just a comment to that. I turned in the state of Washington for $60 million in fraud to the federal inspector general. They don't care. They just print more. My question was about your hopes for the presidency in 2016 and also who you supported in 2012.
2012, I supported the Republican. I did not support Mr. Paul.
But in the primary?
The primary, I supported the Republican.
What do you mean the Republican? There were quite a few of them.
Well, let's see. That's a good question. Yeah. Okay, Romney.
So you supported Romney.
I supported Romney in the general, Did we have a primary in this state? I can't.
No, we had a straw poll.
We had a straw poll.
Caucus.
I'm just
It
curious,
was a non-mandatory straw poll.
like
So
for,
you're
don't
saying
even-
Paul was not a Republican?
I'm saying I didn't support him.
You supported the Republican?
Yeah.
like for 2016, we've got a poll that went around, you know, Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, Santorum, usual candidates. I don't know how much you pay attention to federal politics. I'm hoping quite a bit.
Hopefully.
And I'm just wondering who, you know, the names that are passed around, which name would you like to see in 2016?
I like the governors.
Scott Walker?
Scott Walker.
Jeb Bush?
No, I don't like Jeb Bush. There's too many Bushes, too many Clintons. This is, I don't care what he is. Too many Bushes, too many Clintons. I don't want to see any more of either one. Nor do I want to see any more Obamas. But Scott Walker, I like Senator Ted Coburn. I like Coburn. Nobody's talking about him for president. That's the kind of guy I think we need
He's
to run.
resigning.
Is he? Oh, shoot.
He's not
Well,
rerunning.
that's, anyhow, I like the governors. Scott Walker. Ted Cruz is a possibility. I'm afraid Ted's a little bit of a showboat. I'm not sure. It seems like he might flame out. I don't like Christie. Who else do I not like? I think Chris, pardon?
Rand Paul?
No, I think Rand Paul's an isolationist, but I can't vote for an isolationist. If it's domestic policy, I'd be right down with him. But foreign policy, no, I can't do that.
Tell us about foreign policy.
Let's see, what do I want to know about foreign policy?
Well, if you were our congressman and the votes were coming up on foreign policy, how would you vote?
Well, let's see. If, for example, topical things like what do we do in Iraq? I would vote for airstrikes against those Islamic guys, the ISIS. Had it been Libya, okay? You got to deal with the world you got. And we had a revolution going to topple Gaddafi. There's nobody in the whole wide world that deserved toppling as bad as that guy. Maybe there's some guys that are equal to him, but he's a pretty bad
Let me
actor.
pepper that a little bit. Look, what if you found out, or what if you knew? Because I mean, 60 Minutes is not exactly the most accurate news reporting. What if you discovered that actually what's going over there in the Middle East has all been conspired by the American government, putting people up over there to train people on both sides, to kill people on both sides, in order to take over the whole place, to get us back into a big war over there? What if it was like that? What would you do then?
Well, that's a hypothetical that I can't go.
Well, it's
I
actually
can't go
not.
there.
It's actually not a hypothetical.
Well,
There's
I think it
actually
is a
plenty of facts
hypothetical.
on
There's plenty of facts, but they don't add up to that.
it. Why don't they?
They don't add up to that because they just don't.
Well, what part doesn't?
Okay, we're training we're starting to train people to oppose Assad. I mean, supposedly we've
But
been
3 years ago, from Benghazi, we were supplying those people to fight Assad.
right. Yeah, well, that's what it looks like to me. Yeah, Gaddafi had a bunch of excess weapons
Well, they were our
all
weapons.
over. No, they weren't. They were Russian weapons that Gaddafi
The
had
intercept missiles
stockpiled.
they have are our missiles.
The what missiles?
The intercept missiles, the shoulder mounts, those are U.S.
I'm not sure they are. There was a lot of SA-2s that Gaddafi had that got out of pocket, and our guys were trying to pick those up in Benghazi. They were trying to pick up all kinds of stuff in Benghazi. And I'm not sure how many Stingers, modern med pads, that we gave anybody. I think those are pretty closely held. I doubt if we gave any to the Libyans. If we did, it was a hell of a mistake. What we should have done, in my opinion, was establish, told Gaddafi, you got a no-fly zone, and then enforce it by bombing all his runways, making all his runways unusable. And instead, I mean, we were going to get sucked into that. There was no way around it. And so what did we do? We waited until it was too late to have any effect on the parties that were actually going to win. And we ended up with the situation we got now. If we'd gone in earlier, stronger, established a no-fly zone, we could have tailored the outcome a lot better than we had the capability to, coming in as late as we did and with as little as we did.
I think the big problem with us even interfering in the Middle East is we don't understand the people, the government, their customs, or anything. We keep interfering, and I mean, it's just one big damn mess. They don't want it. I mean, for us to think we're going to impose a democracy is silly. They are not geared to that.
I agree. To think we're going to impose a democracy in less than 2 generations, and we can, we can set the stage for them, and they can have their own. But we're not very good at setting the stage. Yes, sir.
There's a lady here that has a couple of questions I'll ask her for. She would probably like to know how you stand on the gay agenda, and also are you pro-life or pro-choice?
Okay. As far as the gay agenda goes, I'm so tired of that issue. I can't understand it. If it was up to me, I'd give them everything they wanted as long as they shut the hell up. They're not going to shut the hell up, so I'm not going to give them everything they want. Well, I'm not going to. Anyhow, I don't care. I don't care. It's none of my business what they do in private. If they want to insist that
I'm speaking more towards, do you think there should be gay marriage, or do you think marriage is between a man and a woman? And more of that lines. Now, I don't care what they do with their business.
I personally think that a marriage is between a man and a woman, and laws should not be changed. But the people of this state and the people have, by referendum, changed that law.
Thank you.
We've lost. And at some point, you've got to recognize you've lost. And is this an important battle that you're going to continue to lose, or are you going to go on to stuff that you might have a chance to win?
I think we recognize that that is an offensive lifestyle to many people in other countries. They actually have laws against, openly gay things, et cetera, et cetera. However, I read this week that our State Department, this was a speech by Kerry, we are making sure that we are having the gays and lesbians and transgenders be prominent in our State Department and being stationed overseas, so we can start indoctrinating these countries into that lifestyle.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Oh, that's crazy. John Kerry, I don't like John Kerry.
I mean, this is our country. This is the face we're putting out to the world.
Well,
what would you do as a congressperson?
I'd nominate John Kerry for the Secretary of State of Vietnam. For the first thing I do. I don't know that I could do anything as a congressperson.
Could you speak out?
I would object, yes, object strongly. This is idiocy. There's also, if you're gonna care about what other countries think, and I don't necessarily, you also have to deal with who's our Secretary of State. We're going to send a Secretary of State, an American Secretary of State, to deal with Wahhabis, and the Secretary of State's a woman. What's a Wahhabi going to think of that? He doesn't think anything of women. No respect for women. No respect for the country that would send a woman to do that job. So if we're going to start talking about reality, we got to talk about the whole reality. This PC crap is detrimental to us in foreign policy. Not just the gay, lesbian, transgender stuff.
LGBT.
Yeah.
Let's go to Rob here. He's got his hand up.
Yeah, Tom, first of all, only call on people with hands are raised. Also, I salute you for running, because you know something's wrong. I mean, you don't. Sounds like you've woken up recently that something's wrong and you've got to do something about it. And I ran against George Nethercutt in 2002, but I probably couldn't have told you which amendment was which at the time. I just knew we were going down the tubes. I could see it coming. But getting back to gun control, someone said, maybe John knows, one person killed by a gun is a tragedy, 20 million killed is a statistic. And so if you're getting right into body counts, there's a book called Death by Government, and it's, I think probably maybe 50 million soldiers were killed in the 20th century, but like 170 million civilians, men, women, and children were killed. And it mainly happened because
by their own government, not war, by their own
by their own government. It mainly happened
my-
because they confiscated guns because they
Right.
registered. They thought they were cooperating and they were left defenseless. So in Iraq, and I'm sure Tim can speak to it, and people that have served over there, it was a fool's errand. You lived through Vietnam, and it was a meat grinder, and nothing came out of it. We lost 50,000 guys, and in Iraq, we lost 5,000 guys. I think probably for big corporations, but that's not to mention a million men, women, and children that had nothing to do with bombing 9/11. I mean, that whole thing. So I don't know how you do it against Kathy, but if you stay with it and help join us in this fight, I would seek out some of these people and. What do you know? I mean, here's what I think. What do you think? And that's how I've learned over the years. You read books like Creature from Jekyll's Island and find out about the Federal Reserve and find out, why. You wonder why the government can't be that stupid. So somehow they've got some other agenda that's going on. And it's up to Americans, It's not a Republican or Democrat problem. It's up to Americans, if we have a hope for a country at all, to run for office, but to be informed and start doing the best we can. And, you've done more than just throw your shoe at the TV. You've actually spent your money for your filing fee and you're out there, but you're also learning too. I learned a lot by running.
I should have stopped when I was throwing my shoes at the TV.
And hopefully you'll get bit by the bug and stay and help the rest of us.
Yeah.
It's tough to fill in that breach.
Yeah, I think I'm bit. Yeah, but anyhow, as far as foreign policy, I don't agree that Vietnam was a waste. We had a 50-year Cold War. And to me, it was a continuum from World War II, Korea, to all the stuff that happened in the Middle East below the covers during the 50s, to Vietnam, to Berlin. If we had not been willing to fight those bastards, they would have been.
Well, they're human beings, but
well. You're right.
Still, they're our biggest trading partner. They're a big
No, I'm
trading
talking
partner to
about
us
what I'm
now.
talking about is the communists, the Russians. If we had not been willing to fight them and had demonstrated the will to fight them, they would have taken Europe by intimidation. If the Europeans, Americans aren't willing to fight, they would have rolled over. If
They're
if
about
they
there
had,
now.
pardon?
They're about there now.
Yeah, you're right. And we have some French friends, and man, you talk about people that are willing to kowtow. Those French, oh yeah, they supply us with a third of our natural gas. We got to let them do what they want. Well, that's not the right attitude, and we can fight
That's
that.
what we fought for.
We can fight that by driving the price of natural gas down. We can fight it by driving the
But
price.
to correct something you said earlier, Ron Paul wasn't an isolationist. He was a non-interventionist. So you don't go out searching for dragons to slay. The CIA overthrew the democratically elected Mossadegh doctor in Iran in the 1950s,
Right.
and they put the Shah in.
Right.
And
Do you know what the alternative was, though? The alternative was to have a Russian puppet there. That guy would have, Mossadegh, whatever his name was, he would have morphed in, he would have been like Castro. He'd have morphed into a Russian puppet in not too long a time period. They were very active in that period, and that's what their goal was. That's what we were fighting worldwide in that shadow war that went on for so long. And in Greece, and
I know Stalin was into that. I think Paul Johnson wrote a book, Modern Times, where he said Stalin was swallowed the rest of Europe if he hadn't died when he did. But also, we've become an empire ourselves. We've got troops in 130 nations, and we've become an empire. So that now, we can't afford it.
That was a leftover from World War II. I mean, we had to keep the what was it? We stayed in Europe to keep the Germans down and the Russians out, and that was what the European allies wanted. And in Japan, we left a residual force in Japan. We changed their whole society, changed their whole way of life. I mean, that was a success by any measure. And to me, I don't buy the empire stuff, accusation on us. It was a residual from World War II, a residual from the Cold War. I think it was necessary. Had we not done that, the world would be a hell of a lot different and a hell of a lot worse.
You're speaking in the past tense, it was necessary. So we now have,
Raise your hand.
so where are we?
You need to sit in front of her so she
It would be presumptuous of me to tell you where we are definitively, but I can tell you where I think we are. We are on the cusp of new alignments. It looks to me like Russia and China are going to get together tighter than they are already. And due to Mr. Obama's unreliability as a partner, the Arab states that have traditionally looked to us for protection are going to look to Russia and China for protection. And, stuff like that. So it seems to me like the world is going to repolarize. And we're going to be Russia, China, a lot of Arab states on one side, us, and maybe some Europeans on the other side. It just seems to me like it's repolarizing. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think one of the problems for the United States, back when Eisenhower was still president, we knocked down Batista, we fought with Fidel Castro, only to learn later that he's a communist. And then under Carter's administration, we knocked down the Shah of Iran, and look who took his place. We knocked down Saddam Hussein, and it seemed like all hell broke loose. Christians were safer when Saddam Hussein was in power. We knocked down Gaddafi, who I heard protected the Christians in Libya. And now what do we have? I mean, chaos. So when we go around fighting other countries' battles, trying to pick who their leaders should be, it just seems like, I mean, what do we know? I mean, at what point do we have to go around picking their leaders? I mean, what if some foreign power decided to pick our president?
I agree with you.
What if some foreign power came and picked?
Yeah, I don't know. You can make that case on you'd have to make the case for each specific country. I don't think the case is strong for Syria. I don't think the case is strong for Iraq. I mean, I don't think your case is strong for Syria or Iraq. I think Iraq, WMD was a question in Iraq. There was potential for an existential threat against the United States. It was just a potential. They had, we knew they had WMD. They manufactured their own WMD. They used them on the Iranians. They used them on their own citizens. They had a insecticide industry or insecticide factories, and the step between an insecticide factory and a nerve gas factory is about a half a step. It's the same factory. And so there was a strong case for WMD, and we know that in the early 80s
Who gave it to them?
Gave what to them?
The weapons of mass
Insecticides are pretty readily available anywhere. The precursors for insecticides are readily available anywhere. The formulas for nerve gas is readily available anywhere. And, if you know what you're doing. I don't, but if you know what you're doing, you're a chemist, you can make nerve gas out of insecticide or in an insecticide plant if you've got some chemical engineers who know what they're doing, and there's plenty of those around. I'm not sure. Let me go one more. And we do know that he had a WMD or a nuclear weapons program in the 80s. The Israelis killed it when they bombed that reactor in Syria, whose primary purpose was to make I think it's plutonium. I don't know what.
I think Laura's point was under Saddam Hussein, he was able to keep the Sunnis and the Shiites and the Kurds under some sort of semblance of order. And the Christians were not being killed and beheaded and persecuted, and there was some normalcy in the country. Mubarak in Egypt, Assad in Syria, etc. It's a different world. We don't understand it. We interfere, and I believe what your words were is it's just total chaos.
Yeah, well,
And it seems like we've created a lot of it.
Yeah. Thank you.
We've left the opening for that to happen.
We've helped destabilize an always in history's unstable area.
yeah, and they didn't
Well, a
need,
brutal
they didn't
area
need much
we don't
help.
understand.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so foreign policy, let's move on to foreign policy and economics. So we've decided to do business with communist countries, even though Hong Kong's free, right, of course. We are funding China to fund Russia to fund Al-Qaeda, is my idea of national foreign policy, because we do business with communists. Do you believe we should bring those jobs back here and quit doing trade with communist countries?
Well, I think we ought to bring those jobs back here.
It's not isolationism, it's just
Right.
making sure the money
I
ends up in the right pockets.
disagree with you where the money's coming from for terrorism, though. It's coming from Saudi Arabia. They have they're the heart of Wahhabi Islam. That's the idea. Yeah, okay.
So we should quit buying their oil then?
We can't quit buying their oil.
Why?
But,
Why?
well,
I'm just
exporting
curious,
our oil.
because foreign policy with economics,
yeah.
we
Well,
fund wars through our foreign economic policy. So moving from military, we can peaceably deal with some of the problems economically, with tariffs, with a number of different things. So I just was curious about your opinion there.
My opinion is the root of the terrorism problem is Saudi Arabia, and it always has been. They've got their religious establishment is funded by the Saudi government very generously in order to keep the Saudi royal family in power. To the tune of billions and billions of dollars a year.
Do you think we should have millions of foreign exchange students from Saudi Arabia in our country?
That's a separate subject. Let me finish this one.
Okay.
Anyhow, the Saudis have funded their religious establishment. The religious establishment goes out and makes madrasas all over the world, giving Al-Qaeda foot soldiers. And the reason they do it is to keep themselves in power. I think they've been playing a double game on us for a long time. It got worse in the late 70s when they vastly increased their funding of their religious establishment. So to me, like ISIS, those guys that came down out of Syria, their money came from Saudi Arabia. It might not have come from the Saudi government, but it came from rich Saudis. It came from the Saudi religious establishment. It came from Gulf Arabs, like people in Dubai, Qatar, and wherever else those folks live. But and as far as students, I think we should have Saudi students here. I don't think we should give them diplomatic passports. And the last time I was aware of what the status was, we gave them diplomatic passports. I hope that's changed. It might have changed as a result of 9/11. Certainly before 9/11, they all had diplomatic passports. And some Saudi kid a few years ago got in a car accident going, a bazillion miles an hour down Trent and nailed a couple of people, killed them. And my recollection is that they had to get his diplomatic passport rescinded before they could prosecute him. And the Saudi government was willing to do it. He just must not have been very well connected, or they wouldn't have done that. So anyhow, I would hold those folks' feet to the fire. 2 years after 9/11, we were still giving Saudis automatic visas through travel agencies in Saudi Arabia. They didn't have to show up at the American embassy and request a visa. All they had to do was pay for a ticket.
And we also give them foreign aid to pay for the tickets.
Well, I don't know that that's true, but
We give foreign aid
the Saudis,
We give foreign aid to
give
all
them
kinds of weapons.
well, they pay for the weapons.
So just a yes or no to keep this simple for you.
Okay.
Should we do business with dictatorships and communist countries?
No. Keep it simple. That's a simple answer, but it's not a complete answer. China's too big to ignore nowadays. We have too much industry already over there. That was a mistake, and we're finding out.
our industry.
Talking about immigration, before, I think it was the 1965 Immigration Act, legal immigrants, therefore illegal immigrants, were not entitled to any welfare-type programs that the United States had to offer. They couldn't collect food stamps, they couldn't be given welfare assistance, that kind of thing. It just wasn't allowed. And as you know, it now is, and probably a tremendous amount of our welfare budget goes to illegals. And even the legals, I know the Russians that come over under their distress type things are provided a tremendous number of benefits. Is there any way that this can be reversed?
Well, to my knowledge, it's still illegal illegal in stricter interpretation of plain law. It's illegal for illegal immigrants to avail themselves of social services. In reality, they are promoted. They're encouraged to seek social services in California, and I don't know where else.
Probably right here in Washington.
Probably here too. So I think it's laws that are being completely and totally ignored, and they're even more than totally ignored. They're being actively worked against by the agencies that provide that kind of assistance.
Did you know that 1,200 illegal children, unaccompanied children, have been shipped from the Texas border area to the west side to what's our base over there?
I've heard that. I haven't heard the exact number. But anyhow, I think it's a matter of changing who administers our government, changing the administrative state.
See, my
The Democratic Party
is our congresswoman pissed off about that. You know, and that just is just part of that fodder that we have going on here. And I'm interested in hearing people who are pissed off about that too.
I'm pissed off about it. But anyhow, we have to change the administrative state. The Democratic Party is the party of government. They benefit when government grows. The government grows when they have more people to take care of, and they don't care if they're legal or illegal.
So the Republican Party likes big government. They just think they can run it more efficiently.
Well, not this Republican.
It's the Growth and Opportunity Party that changed the name.
Does anybody know how we would find out if they're going to ship any of the illegals here to, let's say, Fairchild or other places?
I think you can count on it.
Well, do we know how to find out? I think I'd like a rally in front of the buses like they did in San Diego.
We can do that. If that happens, we can do that.
But we need to know
Yeah, I
how.
just had a question. Let's fast forward 5-6 months, you're elected, you're going to Washington. Are there any laws that you are looking forward to sponsoring? That's question number one.
Well, my first interest would be to get us to enforce the laws we got. Enforce what we got, get a baseline, then go from there. There's no point in passing more laws if we're not going to enforce the ones on the books right now. As far as laws that I've actually thought about, it has to do with corporate governance. I think we got to. One of the legitimate things that government should do is take care that commerce is conducted honestly, and part of commerce is the way our corporations are run. And publicly traded corporations, the owners are the shareholders, and the people who benefit from that corporation should be the employees and the shareholders ought to benefit in direct proportion to how much they own of the corporation. But we've got a situation now where corporations are not being managed for the benefit of the shareholders and the employees. They're being managed for the benefit of the managers. And I think we need to change some corporate law. We should have model corporate law standards. If you want to be a part of the United States or the stock exchange, your corporate bylaws have to match this model standard. Otherwise, we're just getting too much wealth is going into the hands of the people that are managing those corporations.
So that means you're against the bailouts?
Absolutely. Nobody went to jail in the bailouts, and very few people lost their bonuses due to those bailouts. And that can be attributed directly to, I think, Senator Chris Dodd, who had started a provision in the bailout package that allowed a payment of bonuses for these knuckleheads who'd run their companies into the ground.
So as far as what you were just talking about before Tim's question there, where in Article 1, well, you're talking about corporate governance.
Oh, okay.
Being allowed on the stock exchange and that type of thing. What power in Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the authority to do that, in your opinion?
I don't know. It would seem to me that a very important, a legitimate thing for government to do. Commerce is the key to our success. Commerce can be conducted on various scales. If you have small-scale commerce, can be based on family relationships and trust. And you know the guy; he lives down the hall, or he lives down the street from you. When you stop having when commerce scales up beyond that, then government has a legitimate part to play in making sure the rules are fair and consistent for everybody.
That's kind of what Mussolini did.
Well,
it's called a fascist government.
no, it's not.
Government has no
got
business
involved
in
in down AT&T too, and I think I'm glad they did.
But anyhow, you can.
Cell phone.
If your commerce is not going to scale up to the scale that we need it to provide our standard of living without everybody involved's confidence that the rules apply to everyone. If you want to revert back to a village level economy and take away all the rules and go back to where you just deal with people you know.
All right, so just to follow that up, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. What I'm hearing is that you're saying that it doesn't matter what the Constitution says, that this is what the federal government should be doing.
I don't know that it doesn't say that. I haven't read the Constitution in quite some time. Well, you're right, I should.
Yeah, the
But
government has no
as
business in the business of corporations. And a shareholder does not like the way the corporation is being held. They sell their shares. It has nothing to do with government. There's companies that succeed, there's companies that don't succeed.
Now, that's
And
not
the
right.
more
There's
the
companies that
government
fail
gets-
that the government
The more the
props up.
government gets involved in these things, the worse it gets. I
There's-
spent 30 years in the banking industry, and the government has ruined the banking industry.
Well, I
There is-
agree with you there.
There is businesses that have stayed alive because government props them up, but that's not government's job. Government's job is to protect the individual from an unruly, dishonest corporation, not a corporation that's faltering. You have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the first question. So let's fast forward again. It's January, you've been elected. Are there any laws that you would want to get rid of?
Obamacare. I would do it a little different. Well, Obamacare, it's not going to happen until we get a new president. That's the fact of the matter. Also, when that time comes, well, you can't beat something with nothing. And did we go into, anyhow,
Yeah.
you can't beat something with nothing. So the Republicans ought to have some plan in place, agreed upon, to replace the status quo before Obamacare. and
Here's what the
dump
Republicans
Obamacare.
need. They need a set of cojones in Congress. We have our congresswoman here who's in leadership, GOP leadership in Congress, and they have been emasculated. Boehner and company do everything, or they do not oppose what Obama wants to do. They should be standing up to this guy. We have a level of division of powers, checks and balances, this way, horizontally, where Congress equals executive and it equals the judicial. They are not stepping up to the responsibility.
I agree. Did you come in late?
I did, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry
That's essentially what my speech was.
Okay.
I think they're inept. I don't think and Kathy being part of them, they haven't been doing their job. They haven't been doing pushback. I mean, she had a 10-minute opportunity when she addressed the nation after the State of Union address. 2 weeks after Obama had threatened to use his pen and his phone to go around Congress.
Do you
She
think
didn't
she
say
got the right
she
there?
didn't say squat about that.
Do you think she got the writer's speech?
I don't care if she got to write her speech. If,
Talk about
what is worse? Her doing what somebody else told her to do, or her being stupid enough to write that thing herself?
Well, I'm just asking you a serious question. We don't see, people have said, oh, you know, if Boehner goes, she's probably not going to be able to be the, you know, the Speaker of the House.
I'm sorry.
And you know, I mean, she's not smart enough to make up any of this stuff.
I don't know about anything about her intelligence. That speech did not say leader to me.
No.
That speech said prop. And that's it.
Do you know the percentage of people in Washington State that when they went online to enroll in the health care law, the percentage that have basically been put on the Medicaid rolls?
I think it was like 70%.
80%.
Yeah.
So you have 80% of the people on the, let's say Washington State is normal. So now you have 80% of the people who have signed up using the Medicaid program for 2 years before you have a change in government. You think that you're going to be able to change a lot of this? I don't think so.
We got to start somewhere.
You gotta have to start somewhere.
Sorry.
I can agree with
Well,
starting somewhere.
can I read the Commerce Clause real quick?
Yeah.
Previous, this to Article 1, Section 8, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. So, but it gets tortured into creating corporate welfare, subsidies, farm subsidies, bailouts, you know, and all of that. So, you know, my best soundbite is if we followed the Constitution, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in today.
I agree with you. I agree with you on all those points. But I also think it's a legitimate function of government to set conditions that allow for large-scale commerce, that allow us to have the life we have now. If we did not have an agreed-upon set of laws to regulate commerce, we would be in a village-level economy.
That's corporations.
And we'd all be poor. We'd all be poor.
We are. I mean, we will be.
Well, we'd be a hell of a lot poorer than we are now. Yes, sir.
Yeah, checks and balances. We talked about the horizontal ones, you know, judicial, executive, and legislative. There's also vertical ones. You have the federal government with certain limited powers. You have the state, and then you have the sovereign citizen. Codified in the 10th Amendment. Can you talk about where you stand on the 10th Amendment?
I hadn't read the 10th Amendment. I know it has something to do with. Let me think about that.
The powers not specifically given to
Okay.
the federal government are given back to the states and the
Yeah.
individuals respectively. That's
Okay.
paraphrased.
I agree. I can't remember the aphorism. The government that governs least is the government that governs best. I would be inclined to agree with that.
And the reason I bring it up is I truly believe that the federal government's out of control. It's way too big. They have to be knocked down a peg or two. You know,
I agree.
As citizens here, we have certain rights that are being stepped on. As states, they have certain responsibilities that are being stepped on by the federal government. We saw it in Nevada with the Bundy Ranch thing. Now it's coming to Washington State. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it's something you may have to deal with if you're elected.
I'm familiar with the Bundy thing, but
Yeah,
not up here.
the same thing is coming here to Washington State. The EPA and BLM are harassing farmers down on the borders. Water rights and everything else.
Well, the EPA is way out of hand.
What do you know about the Bundy Ranch?
Just what's in the papers. And
what
and
is
I also know
What
that gent had a lot of sympathy, and he went a step too far. He went out and opened his big mouth and said stuff he shouldn't have, and his sympathy evaporated. You gotta watch that.
It's kind of like saying you don't know much about the Constitution.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you need
Our
to
country-
understand that whole situation.
Well, I know a little more about it than that. Bundy and his family had been there for 100 years, and they'd been leasing this federal land to run their cows, grazing land. And over time, the BLM has had a policy of discouraging that kind of activity on federal land and clamping
Because they're
down
selling
on
it to China.
Well, I don't know what they're doing.
He had
but,
water rights on that property.
Well,
The water rights go along with so many acres of grazing rights.
okay.
He went
But
along
anyway.
with the BLM to pay grazing rights, even though he technically didn't need to. He stopped paying his grazing rights when their new contract with him required that he change from 900 herd that he was running to 150, which would have
Yeah, I read that stuff
totally
too.
broken him.
I
And,
think the BLM policy to drive those guys out of business is not proper,
right.
not appropriate.
They were told to round up cattle, they killed them. They totally violated their orders.
Well, that
It
to
was
me
the
goes
wrong-
back to the mentality of militarization of our law enforcement in this country that started with the drug enforcement.
You know, I agree with you when we get to Spokane and think of militarization. And yet it was very interesting, a young man that is one of my son's friends is now a police officer in South Central Los Angeles dealing in the gang area. And he was sitting on my porch and we were talking about things and he has seen things that I can't even imagine. They need militarization there. We don't need it here. I think it's needed in some areas, it's not in others. Every area is different.
The whole thing with all of the militarization and even the thing in Bundy, all of it, if the Constitution was followed, federal agents are not supposed to do activities on U.S. soil.
No. He's a police officer in LA City.
But that's something that we should address.
Well, just to sort of dovetail off that, we're talking about militarization of police and whatnot, and what we've been seeing, I think it was the Department of Homeland Security Act, but these Inspector General offices and all the various federal agencies have been given police powers. And so what we've been seeing the last couple of years is, I mean, like the USDA just recently put out a bid for a bunch of submachine guns.
Yeah.
And we've been seeing,
Fish and wildlife.
yeah, fish and wildlife. They're looking for, yeah, I mean, just all,
Post office,
you know,
fish and
millions and
wildlife.
hundreds of millions of rounds of ammunition, submachine guns, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
What's your position on that, and what would you?
I
Do you change
object.
that?
I object. It goes along with the militarization of our law enforcement. It got no. We don't need militarized law enforcement at any level. Yeah, a few SWAT teams here and there, regional SWAT teams. You don't need a SWAT team in every podunk town. It seemed to me like the state patrol ought to have maybe 1 or 2 SWAT teams. No SWAT teams in Spokane.
Why do you think we have all that?
Why? Well, it started with the drugs and heavily armed drug. I mean, well,
Well,
it
it
started
started
with
there, that becomes an excuse, but why did we move into this? Why are we doing this?
well, in order to
Disgruntled armed public.
well, I don't know. I think it's because that's what's fun. If you're a cop, what's fun? What's fun about being a cop? You ride around in a car and people are nasty to you all day. Oh, it's fun. You got an armored vehicle. You got a machine gun. You go out and shoot things up every once in a while. It's fun. That's why the cops do it, and why their agencies do it is because the gear is available and it's free, and so they pick it up, and it's also fashionable, and it looks cool. You know, your cops ride around in these cool
Ozzy likes riding around.
cool armored vehicles. So I don't know. It's to me, it's laying the groundwork for serious threat to our freedom. But and it's security theater. I think it's theater. You got like those Branch Davidians. When those knuckleheads attacked the Branch Davidians, they went in and they did a show of force, and all these guys jumped out of the trucks jumped out of the panel trucks just like on TV with their little submachine guns, and they ran up there, and the Branch Davidians shot the hell out of them. If you're expecting armed opposition with serious weapons, serious rifles, you don't make a frontal assault with a submachine gun. You call in an airstrike, you call in artillery, that sort of thing.
In the United States.
Just a point of information on that to let you know this. The FBI was meeting with Koresh a week before he was out fishing
Yeah.
And they were meeting with them. They could have arrested right there and avoided that whole operation.
Well, the county sheriff was an acquaintance of his and had a fairly good relationship
Yeah,
with
and
him.
if the sheriff had had his cojones, he would have kicked the feds out, because that's what the law says.
Well, he didn't have
I
the
think
cojones.
I think we've gone far enough with the discussion.
But wait, one thing on that.
You don't use airstrikes on U.S. soil. You've lost
You're
my vote
right.
with that statement.
No, well, you're not paying attention. You don't attack a well-armed defensive position.
He's a military guy, come on.
You don't attack a well-armed. You don't attack people that you think are going to shoot at you, with running up frontal assault with a submachine gun. You just don't do that. If that's security theater, that's a bunch of idiots that don't know what they're doing.
I don't know why they run
Let
the
me
property.
just follow up on that. I've got a very important point you need to know. There's a video out there called the FLIR Project. You probably know what FLIR is, forward-looking infrared.
Yeah.
They had pictures, helicopter photos taken of agents, whether they were Delta or whether they were federal agents that were firing people. When the building was on fire, they were running out the back door and they were getting shot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the
That's outrageous.
whole thing was theater put on by people who didn't know what they're doing. You do not attack a well-armed guy you think's got the. You don't make a frontal attack on a guy that's well-armed who you think is going to shoot you. And they didn't think somebody was going to shoot him.
Right.
They did not think somebody. They were making a show, and somebody turned around and shot at them. Okay, that's exactly what had happened when some same kind of mentality tried to take our guns. They'd come to our door, make a show, and you just shoot them up. And so I think that's why we are not in danger of having somebody come confiscate our guns, because too many of us would shoot.
No.
Okay, Julian's the last question, and then we'll go on to closing.
Okay, well, was there somebody else that wanted to?
Well, your hand was
All right,
up,
well,
so
all right.
you're the chosen.
So, just to, was your answer to that question that you would support legislation to strip the inspectors general offices of their law enforcement?
That wasn't my answer, but I think that should have been my answer. Yeah, I think
Okay.
those people, the Department of Education does not need a SWAT team, nor does all kinds of agencies that now have SWAT teams. And I would strip them of that stuff, of the security theater, and the means to. And security theater, in reality, at the present day, it's the means of repression.
It's intimidation.
In days to come. So anyhow, I would strip them of this stuff. And security theater is stupid. That's what we get at our airports. That's what we got at the Branch Davidian compound. That's what we get with all kinds of this fancy gear that they ride around in.
Boston.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah, well, that's totally incompetence. Do you notice that nobody's head rolled? FBI director still in place, CIA director still in place. The Russians gave us plenty of information on those people. They could have been. I mean, we're collecting haystacks, looking for needles. We don't have enough people to pay attention. And
Well, they're collecting too much information. You don't know how to figure it out.
Last question, Rob Chase.
Yeah, we went last question.
Just quickly, who would you pattern yourself after as a state politician or whatever?
Politician.
Who do you admire?
If it had to be limited to politicians, it would be Coburn.
Who?
Tom
Coburn of Oklahoma. He's a budget hawk in the Senate.
You can go historically too.
I'll stay with Coburn.
Go ahead and start, if you have a closing speech.
I did my close at the end of that was actually my 1.5-minute speech with my 30-second close. So I already gave you my close. I can give it to you again.
Yeah,
Okay.
Go for it.
So if you want miscongeniality, opposition to the president, and continued massive immigration of unskilled labor to hold down wages and increase Democrat votes, vote for Kathy. If you want a Republican who will never vote for amnesty by any name and will push back hard against President Obama and his banana republic tactics, vote for me, Tom Horne.